Hello everyone, I'm Movie Hanger, and today I'll tell you about the thriller titled Greta. An old mentally ill woman becomes a close friend of a young girl, and this turns into her kidnapping. A whopping 99% of my viewers watch me without subscribing. It's disappointing, please fix that. And now, let's move on to the recap. Recently moved to Manhattan, a young girl named Frances rents an apartment with her friend Erica. While on the subway, Frances discovers a woman's purse and decides to turn it into the lost and found. But there's no one there. She checks it, finds documents belonging to a woman named Greta Heidegg. When she gets home, her friend is curious about the new find. Frances says she found it on the subway, and Erica checks the bag, finding money inside, and suggests spending it on relaxation.
They jet asparagus juice up your ass, and it's not just about cleansing your body.
Frances is upset. She says she wasn't raised that way and intends to return the purse to its owner. The next day, Frances goes to the woman's house to return the purse. The woman is very grateful that the girl returned her belongings and, as a sign of gratitude, invites her in for a cup of coffee. Chatting over coffee, Greta is distracted by noise coming from outside the apartment and asks the neighbors to keep it down.
I swear they're building an ark.
Later, while playing the piano, Greta mentions feeling lonely. Her only daughter is studying in Paris. Feeling sympathy for Greta, Frances suggests she get a dog, and they exchange phone numbers. The next day, they go to a shelter and choose a dog named Morton, who was scheduled to be put down that day. Showing compassion, Greta takes the dog home. They stroll around the city, and Greta chats pleasantly on the phone with her daughter. She also learns from Frances that her mother recently passed away, and she hasn't been getting along with her father since her mother's death. Greta comforts her, saying they didn't meet by chance and that she's willing to be closer to her than just a friend. They grow closer, spending a lot of time together, and Frances admits to Greta that she sticks to her like gum.
I'm like chewing gum. I tend to stick around.
Greta worries that Frances will leave her alone, so Frances promises to always be there for her. One day, while at home, Frances's friend suggests she go to a party, but she refuses as she promised to have dinner with Greta. Erica is unhappy that Frances spends so much time with the old woman she barely knows. They get into a conflict during which Erica tells Frances that she's trying to replace her dead mother with Greta, but no matter how much time they spend together, Greta will never be her mother. Frances gets offended and leaves. She goes to visit Greta, and they prepare to have dinner. However, there are no candles on the table. Greta asks Frances to find candles in the cupboard, and Frances does. Upon opening the wrong cupboard, Frances finds a dozen identical purses with names of people who brought them to Greta. Frances brought the same purse to her. She is horrified and hastily leaves the house without explaining to the hostess. When she gets home, she tells Erica what happened during dinner. Afterwards, Greta starts terrorizing Frances, sending hundreds of texts asking to talk. One day, she came to her workplace to explain herself, but Frances didn't want to listen and asked her not to come to her workplace again. The next day, Frances sees Greta again. She was staring at the girl through the window without moving. Frances was scared of such stalking and decided to call the police. When the police arrived, they didn't see any threat in it. The policeman tells the girl to ignore the annoying old lady and leaves. After work, looking around, Frances goes home. Getting on the subway, Greta appears again and starts screaming for Frances to listen to her. However, the girl manages to get out of the carriage at the last moment. When she reaches home, Greta is already waiting for Frances. She asks her to listen to her, but the girl refuses. Greta recalls her promise not to leave her alone, spitting out her gum at Frances.
You said you always stick around like chewing gum.
The old lady gives her a promise that no one else will treat her like that again. Erica believes that this behavior is wild, and they go to the police, but they are told that the courts are currently overloaded with cases, and they will have to wait for 3 months. Worried about the dog, Frances goes to Greta's house. She finds letters from her daughter, and according to the woman, her daughter should be in Paris, but it turns out she lives in this city. She sends a message to Greta's daughter asking for a meeting, but a certain Alexa shows up instead. She claims to be Greta's daughter's friend. It turns out that Greta's daughter died 4 years ago, having committed suicide after drinking heavily. Alexa tells Frances that Greta's daughter was locked in some box. Alexa also claims that Greta's daughter never went to Paris and that Greta is mentally ill. In contemplation, Frances comes home, but Erica is not there. Calling her, Erica reminds her friend that she's at the bar. Calming down, Frances calls her father, but the call is interrupted by a message from Greta. The old lady sent a photo of Erica from the bar. Frances quickly starts calling Erica and tells her that Greta is in the same bar, and she needs to leave it as soon as possible. Erica leaves through the back door, but Frances continues to receive photos of Erica, although Erica herself doesn't see anyone behind her. Then Frances calls a taxi and rushes after her friend. She arrives just as Erica decides to confront the old lady. Coming to work, Frances takes care of a table, but it turns out Greta was sitting there. Erica behaves calmly and tries to simply serve this table, but the old lady starts yelling at her. In anger, the woman flips the table and screams that Frances needs help. Security detains the woman and hands her over to the police, who take her to the hospital. In the morning, Frances called the police and found out that the old lady was already free. Erica suggests going to Mexico, but Frances sees no point in this trip because she believes that Greta won't leave her alone just like that. The girls decide to lie to Greta, saying that supposedly Frances is going to Mexico to think about life. Coming to the church, she finds Greta there because she visits it every Friday. The girl asks for forgiveness and says she's leaving. The woman starts to pressure Frances, reminding her that the girl is completely alone and needs a mother. She asks for hugs from the girl as compensation for her long absence. Returning home, Frances pours herself some coffee and notices that someone has watered the flower. She's frightened, as Erica wouldn't do that. Approaching closer, her vision starts to blur. Suddenly, Greta appears, accusing Frances of lying. She takes her to her home, where Frances sees Greta's dead dog. Greta killed it by adding poison to the water. Greta opens the door behind the piano, drags Frances inside, and, placing her in a wooden box with toys, closes it, taking away her phone first. Frances wakes up in her apartment. She sees Erica, who has come to see her off. Calming down, Frances enters the elevator. It seems like it was just a dream, but then she wakes up again, this time in the box. Upon her cries, Greta comes, leaving the box open and then leaves, closing the door to the room. Frances asks for help, but Greta ignores her. Using Frances's phone, the smelly old woman sends photos found in Frances's gallery to her father, saying that Frances is vacationing with Erica. She also sends photos to Erica, saying that she is on vacation with her father. After some time, Frances's father goes to the girl's house, and, meeting Erica, they realize that Frances is in trouble. Meanwhile, Greta teaches the girl to play the piano. She considers her as her daughter and cares for her.
No.
The old woman forces her to drink milk before bedtime, adding psychotropic drugs to it. If Frances doesn't drink the milk, she will sleep in the box.
Please. We don't want the box again, do we?
Meanwhile, Frances's father turns to a private detective for information about the woman who kidnapped his daughter. Thinking that she has finally crushed Frances's will, Greta starts teaching the girl to make cookies. While Greta is distracted by the cookie cutter, Frances cuts off the woman's finger and hits her on the head with a rolling pin. In panic, she rushes to the exit, but not finding the keys to the door, she goes down to the basement, where she finds a half-dead girl in a sack, most likely the previous victim of the old woman. Frances doesn't have time to help her, as Greta catches up with her from behind and sedates her. Upon waking up, she finds herself tied to the bed. Meanwhile, Greta injects something into her finger. While she's away, Greta meets a private detective who is looking for Frances. Frances, hearing the conversation, begins to try to make some sound with her mouth closed. Hearing that Frances is trying to attract attention, Greta turns on the music and says it's her dog making noise. However, Frances still manages to attract attention, and the detective approaches the piano, behind which the girl was located, and tries to move it. But then, Greta injects something into his neck. The man's mind begins to blur. He takes a gun and tries his best to aim at the woman, but he fails, and she takes the weapon, then calmly kills him. After tidying up the house, she goes to the subway to leave the bag again and find a new victim. Later that day, a young, beautiful girl comes to her. They chat over a cup of coffee,
I swear they are building an ark.
and while Greta is distracted, she adds a sleeping pill to Greta's coffee. The woman falls unconscious. This girl turns out to be Erica. After Erica finds her friend, music starts playing. Frightened, Frances panics.
No!
But Erica discovers that it's just a recording. Suddenly, the old woman grabs Frances, but due to the sleeping pill, she falls and falls asleep. The girls lock the smelly old woman in her own box and decide to call the police. That's all for today. I highly recommend subscribing to my channel, giving a like, and leaving a comment. Bye for now.